In this video, you're going to be coding a small program which will help you to apply the skills that you have learned. So you're going to be applying what you learned about printing, getting user input, as well as operations. And if you want, you can use functions if you're comfortable. But yeah, let's see what this program actually does. So this program will calculate how many days it will take you to finish your book. How many pages are in your book? So I'm going to type in 50. How many pages have you read already? So I'm going to say I've read 10 pages already. And how many pages can I read a day? So I'm going to type 5 pages. I can read 5 pages per day. It will take you 8 days to finish your book. So that's essentially what this program does. It just performs a simple calculation and it tells the user how many days it will take to finish their book. At this point, pause the video and give it a go. And once you're ready, feel free to look at my solution. If you're still not confident, then I'll give you some useful hints to help you get started. So at the start of the program, we can see that we're just printing a series of dashes and also this message. This message just tells the user what this program does. Next, we ask the user 3 questions. So we get user input, and what we do is we use the input function to do this, and we can store these in variables. So the reason we store these in variables is that we will need to use these values that the user has entered for the calculation later on. And next we'll perform the calculation. So to get these 8 days, we need to use the values that the user has entered, and we need to just print this to the screen. Now I'm going to go through how I would code it, and I'm going to code it without using functions. So functions are really important, and I will show you a version which does implement functions. The reason we're not using functions straight away is because it can be quite confusing for beginners. So let's have a go at coding the first line. So firstly, we just need to print these series of dashes. So I'm just going to use the print function, and I'm going to copy and paste these dashes. Next, we have a message which tells the user what the program does. So I also need to print this so that they can see it. Okay, and next we need to ask the user 3 questions. So what we do is we ask them how many pages are in their book, how many pages have they read already, and how many pages can they read per day. And we need to store these inside variables. So the reason we need to store these inside variables is we need to use them in calculations later on. So let's have a go at using the input function to get user input. And inside these double quotes, we're just going to ask the question. So the first question is, how many pages are in your book? And we're going to store this inside a variable called total pages. Okay, currently this variable stores a string. So if we want to perform calculations in Python, we can't use strings, we need to use integers. So let's transform this variable so that it doesn't hold a string anymore, it holds an integer. So to do that, we just write int, and we include these brackets. So we're wrapping the whole thing inside brackets, and now total pages is holding an integer. We're going to do a similar thing for the next 2 questions. So I'm going to use the input function, and I'm also going to store it as an int. So int input, I'm going to ask them the second question. How many pages have you read already? So what do you think a good variable name would be for this? Pages read already pages read would be fine. And we just need to ask them the final question. So this asks them how many pages can you read a day. So I'll just write pages read per day. And we're going to store this as an integer because we want to perform calculations on it. And we're going to ask this question, how many pages can you read a day? Okay, so now we've got what the user has typed, and we've stored it inside these variables. We need to perform the calculation. So how do we actually get 8 days? So in this example that I used earlier, there were 50 pages in the book, and the user has already read 10 pages. That means that they have 40 pages left to read. So all we do is 40 divided by 8, and that gives us how many days it will take them to finish their whole book. So let's perform the calculation. So first we need to find the difference of these 2 values. So we need to subtract pages read from total pages. So pages read, subtract, the other way around. Total pages, subtract pages read. And we want to store this inside a variable. So this variable will contain how many pages they have left to read. pages left to read. Okay, and next we need to perform the division. So we've done 50 minus 10, so that's 40. And we need to divide that by how many pages they can read a day. So we'll call this variable days, and we'll divide pages left to read by pages read per day. Lastly, we want to print this to the user. So we're just going to print the result. So it will take you days, and we're going to write it will take you this number of days to finish your book. Finish your book. Okay, and right now days is holding an integer. So to print days and join it with a string, we want to transform days to a string. So we just wrap it in a string. So str. Okay, let's run the program and see if it does what's expected. So this program will calculate how many days it will take you to finish your book. How many pages are in your book? I'll say 676. And I've read 43 pages. And I can read 5 pages a day. So it says it will take you 126.6 days to finish your book. So yeah, this program works as expected. And now I'm going to show you a version which uses functions. So here I have the program with functions. So at the beginning, we have a function called welcome user. So this just contains the starting message. So it describes what the program does. And the reason we use functions is essentially just to split up our code, and it makes it easier to read. So over here, as you can see, we do not know exactly what these 3 lines of code does. We actually have to read it. But just by looking at this function's name, I can see immediately that it welcomes the user. So functions are really good for making your code more readable. And it also helps to structure your code. Okay, so at the start, we welcome the user, and then we call this next function, which is the user input function. So here we ask the user the 3 questions, just like before. So the code is exactly the same. And after we've asked the user the 3 questions, we call another function called calculation. So calculation performs the calculation. It's pretty descriptive, and it's really easy to read. So we pass the calculation function these 3 values, and these values are just what the user has entered. So the calculation function needs something to work. It needs these 3 variables, otherwise it won't work. So that's why we're passing it these variables. Okay, now the calculation method will run, and it will be able to use these variables and perform the function, the calculation. And finally, we display the result. And all the display result function needs is the actual result. So how many days it will take the user. So we just pass it the number of days as an argument. Okay, and lastly, we just run the display result function. And this just prints how many days it will take the user. Okay, and to get our program to start, because we're using functions, we need to let Python know which function it should call first. So we need to start with the welcome user function. So I just wrote welcome user with parentheses. And that's the end of this programming tutorial. So if you found it useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night.